Now let's look at comparing fractions with like denominators using a number line model. Based on what you learned last week about number lines, let's take a look at the first two. These number lines are the same length and they are both cut into the same number of sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. So before we get started, let's label each fourth of our number line. We can now see that in our top number line, the x is on the fraction 1/4, and on our bottom number line, the x is on the fraction 3/4. Because the bottom x, representing 3/4, shows a greater distance, we can see that 3/4 is greater than 1/4. And also, just like before, we can flip that inequality around to say that 1/4 is less than 3/4. Now let's try one more time with the bottom number line. Again, the lines are the same length and they are cut into the same number of sections, thirds. Knowing that, let's label the number lines just like we did on the top set. We can now see that on the top number line, the x represents 2/3, and on the bottom number line, the x represents 1/3. Because the top x is a greater distance to the right, 2/3 is greater than 1/3, or we can also say 1/3 is less than 2/3. Just like on the area models from before, the same rule applies. If the denominator is the same when you are comparing fractions, the larger numerator represents the larger fraction. Again, this is not the same when comparing unlike denominators, so only apply that rule when you are using the same denominator. Now let's look at comparing fractions with unlike denominators using a number line model. Looking at our top set of number lines, you can see that the first number line is cut into 4 sections and the bottom number line is cut into 3 sections. So we will need to label our number lines with fourths and thirds. We can now see that this x represents 1/4 and this x represents 2/3. Because this x is further over to the right, we can see that 2/3 is greater than 1/4, or 1/4 is less than 2/3. Looking at the bottom set of number lines, we again see that these number lines are cut into fourths and thirds. So let's label our number line. We see that this x represents 3/4 and this x represents 1/3. Looking at the number line, we can see that 1/3 is less than 3/4, or the opposite, 3/4 is greater than 1/3. Again, it is very important to make sure that your lines are the same length and that you have spread your sections out equally in order to compare with accuracy.